all you cool cats and kittens, welcome back to Remote Learning with Miss Corwin. We are going to be continuing our narrative writing editing process, editing phase. We are on day 3 and let's jump into it. So what's the next thing we're going to be working on? Well, now we are going to be focusing on adding dialogue. So what is dialogue? Well, dialogue is the words spoken in your story, but it can also be inner thoughts that you may have throughout your story. So including dialogue in our writing makes us better writers and can help us create better and more interesting stories. With dialogue, we get a chance to see more about the other characters in your story as well. And so how do we really use dialogue? Well, dialogue in your story should not be full conversations. It should not be a, "Where do you want to go today?" I asked my sister. I don't know, maybe to the park," she replied. "Oh, I don't think I want to go to the park today. It's too hot," I answered. It shouldn't be something like that. It shouldn't be conversations. Otherwise, you're going to lose the point of your story. And I don't know if you've ever read a book that has a lot of dialogue. There's not a lot happening usually when that happens. It's kind of boring just because it's people talking, and people talking isn't always the most interesting thing. So we're going to try to only include 1 or 2 lines of dialogue at a time whenever we write our stories. And good dialogue should seem natural, and it should always move the story forward. So what that means when I say it should sound natural, means it should just sound like something you would actually say. If it's a word that you wouldn't use, don't use that word in your dialogue. Use words that you would actually use in real life. If you wouldn't say something like, "Mother, my epidermis has irritation," you probably would never say that. What you would probably say is, "Hey mom, my arm is itchy." So use words that make sense for you. Use words that you would actually use. And they should move the story forward. So don't include anything that's not helping at all. So if you're writing a story about being in a car and then suddenly you're like, "Mom, I'm hungry," but then you getting or you being hungry never gets fixed, that doesn't help the story move forward at all. If it doesn't lead to your mom taking you to like a McDonald's or something and getting you food, it was just something you were saying, that doesn't help. So only include dialogue that actually helps your story. And when we use dialogue, we need to put it in quotation marks, uh, and the quotation marks go around what is being said, and then you need the tag. The tag of the dialogue is who is speaking. So you need to put the thing spoken or thought in quotes, and you need to include the tag. So let's look at examples from my story. So I have turned mine green. That's what you're going to need to do today too. You'll need to turn yours green. "Mom, are we there yet?" I complained. So the things I said were, "Mom, are we there yet?" So I put these quotation marks around them. You have a button on your keyboard that makes quotation marks. You'll probably need to hit Shift, and it's the button that helps you usually make like a apostrophe. So you hit Shift and then that button for the quotation marks. I include my tag, "I complained." And there's a good chance that if you had gone through with your strong verbs, you may have changed some of these. So it's okay to change these from red to green. I know that I had registered "I said" and I changed that to "I complained." So I had to change the color from red to green, and that was okay. So, "Mom, are we there yet?" I complained. We had already been driving for hours, and even though there was room to move around in the RV, I was tired of not being able to go outside. I was having a lot of fun on this trip across the country, but being stuck in an RV for hours made my brain feel like it was melting. "We'll be there soon," Mom replied. So this is what Mom said. "We'll be there soon." I have the quotation marks around what she said. I have my tag, "Mom replied." So this is what you need. Notice how I only have 2 instances in this whole paragraph, and they're not even really connected with each other. So it's not really a conversation. It's just 2 people saying 2 sentences. I couldn't wait to get to the campsite and finally get out of here. We drove into the campsite just as the sun was beginning to set. Even though it was nearly nighttime, the heat of the day still gripped us and made us feel all hot and sticky. Mom dragged her feet as she made her way from the driver's seat to the bed in the back of the RV. As the sun set and darkness took hold of the campsite, I could hear a symphony of a million crickets just outside. Then something in the darkness caught my eye. It was something I had never seen before. So in this paragraph, I can see that I did not include any dialogue. So let's jump in and include some. So I'm looking for a place where I can put dialogue in. And I think I'm going to include an inner thought, something I just think in my head and I don't say it out loud. So it says, we drove into the campsite just as the sun was beginning to set. Here, I think I'm going to say something like, finally, I thought, period. And then here, it's actually already green because I had done this before. I changed the font color to green. And on mine, I also bolded it just so you could see a little bit better. But here, you can see I have my quotation marks, I have what I thought, and then I have my tag. I thought. Let's continue on. Just outside the window, tiny lights hovered in the air and then disappeared. They appeared again. I got my little brother's attention and we looked out at the small blinking lights. We need to get out there, I whispered to him. So again, here's a spot where I included dialogue. It says, we need to get out there. That's what I said to him. I whispered to him. I have the quotes around it. I have who said it, it was me, and then the tag. I whispered to him. Notice I didn't include anything like, oh, okay, but what about mom? He asked. We'll think of that later, I said. I don't need to include any of that. It's not a conversation. You're just putting some dialogue in. So, I whispered to him. We looked at our mom lightly snoring on the bed. We snuck lightly to the door and then began to open the hatch. A squeak. We glanced at our mom, nervous of what she would think if she saw us leaving the RV without supervision. Her body shifted, but she stayed asleep. We opened the door and the smell of fresh rain filled our noses as we stepped out. My heart beat faster with the excitement of sneaking out of the RV. As we stepped outside, I could taste the pine trees that surrounded us. The soft glow of the mysterious lights was above us, and I realized that they were fireflies. They're beautiful, I whispered to my brother. Again, this is what I said. They're beautiful. I have my quotation marks around what I've said, so one at the beginning, one at the end. My tag, I whispered to my brother. We stood in the dark. We stood in the dark. The only light we saw was from the fireflies dancing in the air around us. We stood in the dark with the fireflies for what felt like hours, and then tiptoed back into the RV before our mom woke up. As I lay down on my bed that night, the butterflies in my stomach danced just as the fireflies outside had. I thought I would be awake all night watching the fireflies from my window. I hadn't even realized I'd fallen asleep until my mom woke me up with a soft, "You ready to go on to the next state?" So in this case, I put my tag at the beginning. So I said, my mom woke me up with a soft, meaning with a soft voice. You ready to go on to the next state? So she asked me this one. So this is what she said. You ready to go on to the next state? I have quotations at the beginning, at the end, and my tag is actually before this happened. So it's I had just noticed that in my story, most of the time my tag was after whatever said, but it could be something, you can have your tag at the beginning too, and that is totally acceptable. There's no right or wrong way to do it. It's not better to do it at the beginning versus the end. They both work perfectly fine. I rubbed my eyes and looked around. The fireflies were gone and the sun was shining in through the glass window. The RV pulled out of the campsite and we were off. As we drove away from the campsite, I hoped that I would see a million other new things that made me just as excited as those little fireflies did that night. So, if I look back at my story, I have 2 instances in my first paragraph, 1 in my second paragraph, 1 in my third paragraph, 1 in my 4th paragraph, and 1 in my 5th paragraph. So your job today is in your first drafts of your narrative writing, read through it and look for places where you can add dialogue. Try to find at least 1 place per paragraph. So I'd like to see 1 line of dialogue at least in each of your paragraphs. And color this new dialogue in green. I'm going to be looking for the green dialogue. If you have any questions, of course, just let me know. I'm always here to help you. But that's all I have for you today, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye, everybody.